Leo's eyes widened with rage. He couldn't help but grit his teeth and panic. He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing. Just then, the star unleashed a powerful explosion, releasing an intense and mighty energy. Leo felt fear, began to back away, and released Trinus, causing her to fall to the ground. Leo stared at the explosion with a surprised and confused expression as his men ran towards him, asking their boss what was happening. Inside the intense flames of the star's explosion, Lu Sheng was focused with his eyes closed. His entire body was glowing and he seemed to have merged with the sun. With a furious gaze, Leo realized he had to do something. He turned to his men and ordered them to launch an attack with all their strength against the star before them. Noticing Leo's expression, his men were confused, unsure of what was happening. Following Leo's command, all the spaceships began to charge their energy cannons towards the star where Lu Sheng was meditating. When Leo gave the order, all the ships fired powerful blasts of energy at the star. As the attack slowly approached, Lu Sheng remained still, but then he opened his eyes and began to stare silently at Leo. Our boy used his power, and his martial energy began to expand throughout space, dispersing the energy blasts fired by the spaceships. Lu Sheng's energy was so powerful that it caused all the ships to begin shattering into pieces, leaving Leo and the others somewhat confused. The floor of the ship where Leo and his men were began to tremble, everyone's eyes filled with fear, causing them to panic, knowing this was not good. Leo remained calm, took out his walkie-talkie and with a look full of determination, ordered his men to scatter. No matter how hard he tried to communicate with his subordinates, there was no response. Noticing this, Leo's eyes filled with fear, and his body began to tremble. Leo lost his composure and without a second's hesitation, he fell to his knees on the ground. He couldn't comprehend how this had happened. Then his attention was caught by something, and his eyes widened in surprise and terror. As Lu Sheng's body was surrounded by martial flames, he slowly began to emerge from within the star. As Lu Sheng's body was transforming, he clenched his fists tightly and began to gaze downward in silence. Several seconds later, Lu Sheng focused and decided it was time to stop cultivating. Using his martial powers, he extended his hand to the side, and the martial flames transformed into the clothes he usually wore. As his eyes shone with a serious light, Lu Sheng slowly began to raise his head. While Leo and his men were distracted, Lu Sheng appeared before them in the blink of an eye. Noticing this, Leo, who was still on his knees, stared up at our boy with a terrified expression. His eyes widened in terror, and his body began to tremble. He asked our boy who he was. As a suffocating aura emanated from Lu Sheng's body, he stared down at Leo in silence, without saying a single word. Observing closely, our boy noticed Leo's disbelief. He couldn't comprehend how someone with such an immense aura was merely level 10. Leo's expression changed, filled with determination, and without wasting a single second, he shot to his feet and charged at Lu Sheng, screaming at him not to underestimate him. Our boy glanced down in silence. Leo's eyes began to shine with determination. Concentrating all his martial power into his fist, he yelled for Lu Sheng to go to hell. With a serene expression, Lu Sheng extended a finger and, using his perfected martial arts, summoned a tiny fire phoenix. The moment the phoenix appeared, the martial energy surging from Leo's hand vanished completely. Just before Leo could attack, intense martial flames began to burn his body. His eyes filled with surprise and confusion, not knowing what was happening. As the flames slowly enveloped Leo, he panicked and with a furious expression wondered how this was possible. His eyes began to gleam with rage as veins popped on his face, unable to believe that this was truly the power of a level 10. In a matter of seconds, the flames consumed Leo's body, causing it to explode into pieces. Noticing this, his men, who had drawn their weapons, were stunned, their eyes widening in confusion as they saw their boss had vanished without a trace. One of them began to tremble in fear, stammering that he was a monster. He couldn't believe that their peak level 11 BOSS had been defeated so effortlessly. Lu Sheng gazed down at the floor as his martial energy expanded throughout the spaceship. Then he raised his head and stared at Leo's remaining subordinates. Everyone present felt as if an electric shock coursed through them, filling them with horror and astonishment. This was followed by absolute fear. Calmly, Lu Sheng snapped his fingers. His energy was so powerful that it made Leo's subordinates bleed from their mouths. In an instant, they all lost their lives, and the floor was filled with a mountain of corpses. Standing before the bodies, Lu Sheng began to ponder in silence, somewhat confused to find he had killed them all so easily. Trinus, who was kneeling on the floor, began to look from side to side. Noticing that all of Leo's men were dead with blood coming from their mouths, she was filled with confusion. With a serene gaze, Lu Sheng approached Trinus and, in a concerned tone, asked if she was okay, telling her to contact the Star Police, as he had already taken care of everything. Trinus began to observe Lu Sheng intently, and her eyes widened in surprise and curiosity, asking if he could be the legendary immortal legend. Without wasting another second, she prostrated herself before Lu Sheng, believing she had met the Lord. Lu Sheng didn't say a single word. He didn't know how to react to the situation. Trinus began to tremble with fear, her eyes widening in confusion. She couldn't believe it, wondering if this was truly the power of the immortal. Lu Sheng began to gaze at his hand in silence and felt a bit curious, wondering exactly how strong he was right now. Our boy focused, and an instantaneous yet powerful martial energy began to surge from his hand. At this moment, Lu Sheng didn't know his own strength, and in fact, no one knew it. It was impossible to know. Several hours later, Lu Sheng returned to his spaceship, the White Hole Voyager. Using his finger, he activated a window on the ship and began to navigate it with a calm expression. He reflected on the fact that every time he activated the Stellar Supreme Body, his clothes would explode. Fortunately, he could use his mental power to construct new garments. Lu Sheng began to imagine himself cultivating, celebrating his success in the practice with a laugh. A nervous smile spread across his face, as otherwise he would have become a true exhibitionist. Lu Sheng made a video call with his family and wife, whom he informed with a smile that he had come out of his seclusion. His wife and sister began to smile. Lu Sheng was on his spaceship and taking advantage of the great event of the Interstellar Martial Arts Geniuses Exchange Conference being held in the Yamu Star District. He arranged for his parents, his wife, and several martial saints with whom he had a good relationship to be brought to this star district. Lu Sheng hung up the call, and as the system window disappeared, his eyes began to shine with joy. With this, he was giving his parents a heads up, which would make their relocation from Azure Star much easier later on. The destination was the main star sector of the Yamu Star District, where another great event awaited him. A spaceship landed at the spaceport of the main satellite of the Yamu Star District. His sister began to observe the buildings, astonished. Snowy began to smile, while their mother's attention was fixed on the clothes she was wearing, wondering what material they were made of, as they were cool and very comfortable to wear. The father, who was smoking a cigarette, began to smile. He couldn't believe this was a high civilization planet. Thanks to the supplies provided by countless nobles, Lu Sheng's family reached a martial level comparable to grade 6, and his parents looked much younger. His sister took a selfie and posted it on social media, expressing her amazement at seeing an extraterrestrial civilization with her own eyes. The post was immediately filled with admiring comments, Lu's army members reporting in, and other users asking for her WeChat. Snowy began to walk around the place and couldn't help but smile and feel relieved to see this was the place where Lu Sheng had ended up. The white-haired man's eyes filled with surprise as he recalled his days with Lord Lu. He never thought this day would come. Lin Zhengyu was astonished to see how advanced this planet was. Just then, an old man with a unicorn horn approached them, placed a hand on his chest, and with a smile, welcomed them to the 8th Star Sector on behalf of the Yamu Star Sector Federation, extending to all of them the most sincere and enthusiastic welcome. Kingy's eyes filled with surprise as she realized that these clothes even had an auto-translation function, allowing them to communicate without any barriers. The father began to smile and felt somewhat confused, flattered by the feeling of being treated like the leader. With a smile, the mother replied with a laugh that they were all just basking in the saint's glow. With a smile, Qinghe approached the old man and posed for a selfie, asking her bros on social media if they had seen this and pointing out that the alien with such peculiar skin was the envoy sent by the Yamu district government to welcome them. At that moment, a giant spaceship began to descend from the sky, drawing everyone's attention. Qinghe began to jump with joy, amazed by the immense size of the spaceship. With a cheerful smile, she moved closer, announcing to her bros that she would get a closer shot. Once she was near, she saw that the spaceship had the symbol of a wolf. Noticing this, the old man's eyes filled with fear, causing him to panic, as he knew this was not good.